CES is one of my favorite events of the year, and it's one of the first ones. There's a few others throughout the year, but honestly, this one's my favorite. We get to learn the most about some of the products coming out later this year, and one of the most anticipated products at CES was the new Lenovo Legion Go 2 and Lenovo Legion Go S. The overall designs of these devices have been extensively leaked, and it was fair to assume at CES AMD would also unveil the Z2, and the fact that these new Legion Go devices would be coming out would also presumably have the new Z2 chips inside them. And we did learn some pretty decent information that ended up being true about the Legion Go S having SteamOS as an option for that device, which honestly is one of the most interesting things about it, because the chipset this thing comes with doesn't inspire confidence for this being bleeding edge performance, but with what we learned recently, it might be just a compelling enough value that the performance sacrifices you have to make going this way might be actually worth it. So let's break down what we know in everything that got unveiled about the Legion Go S first, and then we'll go to the Legion Go 2, because that's the one we have less information about, but we'll get to that later. The Legion Go S will have the Z2 Go chip, which we'll go into it a bit later, but it isn't the best chip out there, somewhere between the Steam Deck and the original Z1 chip in terms of performance. But the biggest downside with that is the less efficient processor design. It's just not as battery efficient and will suffer from similar battery as some of the last generation devices that we've experienced. So that's basically meaning like 3 hours at best, which would be okay if it had an 80 watt-hour battery like the RG Ally X, which doesn't have the most efficient processor out there, but can brute force its way to having decent battery life by having an enormous battery. But this is a classically designed PC handheld, so it only has about a 55 watt-hour battery with a 3-cell just pack. So it's not the largest battery out there. And it doesn't seem like there's a ton of options when it comes to memory and storage to hopefully make this thing a little bit cheaper, because this thing comes with a whopping 32 gigabytes of RAM and 1 terabyte of storage, which 1 terabyte, not that bad. That's pretty good. A lot of people probably end up buying that or upgrading to that anyways. But 32 gigabytes of RAM honestly seems a little excessive, but that does mean you can dedicate 8 gigabytes of memory to the integrated graphics. And as we've seen with the devices like the RG Ally X, dedicating that extra bit of memory could mean the world for performance. The memory is clocked at 6,400 megatransfers per second, which it's not the fastest memory out there, but it's also not the slowest, so I wouldn't really take it or leave it when it comes to that speed. I wish it was at least 7,000 megatransfers per second, but 6,400 is close enough. We do know the Z2 Go is a last generation architecture-based processor, so it's safe to assume it's using the 780M found in the last generation Z1 Extreme. But it has that modified to, instead of having the 8 total CPU cores inside that version, this version has a total of 4 cores, which isn't terrible, but a lot of modern games like more than 4 cores nowadays. I would have liked at least 6, but it's just one of the few sticking points about this device that bothers me a little bit, because it's based on what we've had before, so I would have liked to see 8 cores, or at least 6. And that's mainly because the original base Z1 non-extreme chip had 6 cores. So in some aspects, this is a downgrade when it comes to CPU performance in comparison to the original base Z1 non-extreme chip. So if you find yourself playing a lot of CPU-bound titles, it is going to run worse on this device than it would on the original Z1 or Z1 Extreme chips. The screen of the new Legion Go S is going to be 1080p, 120Hz, which is happy about that. It's weird, I've seen it listed as an 8.1-inch screen or a solid 8-inch screen. It could be that some people are rounding down and just getting into the minutia of the exact screen dimensions, but for simplicity's sake, I'm going to say 8 inches, because there can be a larger screen found for the Legion Go 2. That's around 8.8 inches, which is, I think, a screen upgrade in terms of size in comparison to the original Legion Go. Like I mentioned before, pre-orders for the Windows version with the Z2 Go become available during February, And in May is when we should expect the SteamOS version, which apparently that one will be coming with the option to equip it instead of with the Z2 Go, but with a Z1 Extreme, which is fascinating to me, mainly because they probably intentionally gimped the Z2 Go chip because of them anticipating of just keep reusing the Z1 Extreme, which, don't get me wrong, is a plenty powerful chip, and the Z2 Extreme is going to be even more powerful. But it just feels redundant, but it does kind of make sense when you consider that this is supposed to be more of a budget device, but to me it just reads kind of weird and makes the pricing a little bit stranger, and just why wouldn't you just buy the original Legion Go when that inevitably goes on sale? Unless they intend on keeping that around, this Legion Go S feels more a little superfluous, I guess, in the greater scheme of the market. The SteamOS version will be around $500 or $600, and the Windows version with exclusively the Z2 Go apparently is $600 to $729 because it comes with 1 terabyte of storage, 32 gigabytes of RAM, and so I just assume a lot of money is going to the higher spec versions. But to me, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense. I'll make a more revised and more concrete video when we get more concrete information. This is currently pretty much everything we know about the Legion Go S, which is a very interesting device, but it feels a little bit unfocused, and hopefully with time and more information, we should be able to remedy some of those just misunderstandings or just bits and pieces of information that we clearly don't have quite yet. So I anticipate the next couple months are going to be very interesting. But for the Legion Go 2, it's a little bit more of a precarious situation because that device is still technically within the prototyping stages. According to a representative over at Lenovo, they're still working out some stuff about it and will require a little bit more time to refine that. And the Legion Go 2 is not receiving SteamOS, so I'm not entirely sure what that delay could be, but it's still very exciting. It's going to have the Z2 Extreme chip with the 890M AMD graphics, which from what we've seen so far are amazing and incredibly powerful. It doubles its SSD capacity from 1 to 2 terabytes, also doubling its maximum memory from 16 to 32 gigabytes of memory. The battery capacity will also increase from 49 watt hours to 74 watt hours, which isn't the largest battery we've seen on the market, but it's pretty decent. It's just 6 watt hours from being exactly what's found in the RG Ally X, which with a more efficient processor, I doubt would be any difference in my opinion. The controllers are remaining detachable, which is one of my favorite parts about the Legion Go. It will also still retain its trackpad, which is pretty nice to see. It will also feature a whole new redesign for the Legion Space software, which some people have expressed isn't great. I didn't really care for it, but I just generally found it less bad than Armory Crate, but that's because I don't like Armory Crate. Some of those details that we don't really know about is pricing, port details, audio specs, which are all currently still to be determined. But there might be a catch depending on your perspective. The Legion Go 2 will have a resolution drop from 2560 by 1600 all the way down to 1920 by 1200, which some of you might be thinking, oh, that sucks to get a lower resolution panel. To me, the display has always been a bit of a sticking point because it never made any sense. That is an incredibly high resolution and completely unrealistic to game at unless you're playing mostly indie titles. If you're playing any modern AAA title on that device, it's not going to be running at that full resolution. You're gonna drop it to at least 1080p, most likely down to 720p depending on how demanding the game is you're trying to play. And I genuinely think that makes a decent choice, to switch to a lower resolution panel makes a lot of sense. It also will help you increase battery life because a 2560 by 1600 display is, like I said, an incredibly high resolution and kind of pointless for a screen that's only 8.8 inches. You're not perceiving any of those pixels even if it was 1080p. Making it 2560 by 1600 is just borderline insane and just overall just extreme and unnecessary in my opinion. While some people might appreciate the incredibly high resolution, I personally like the idea of dropping down to 1080p, and that's still going to be a plenty sharp display while netting you battery improvements and some improvements in games. The Legion Go 2 still is anticipated to release at some point during 2025, and I expect that to be somewhere around October at the latest. Realistically, August, June, July, sort of summer time frame, to me makes the most sense for this device to come out, but it really depends on how long it takes for them to iron out pricing and just port layouts and stuff like that. But for my just overall gut reaction to this, I anticipate this thing being anywhere between $700 to $900 because of how the market is trending right now. I think that's a pretty normal price to see this thing at, especially with how expensive the original Legion Go was and the RG Ally X was. So I anticipate this thing, when it fully comes out, is going to be pretty darn expensive. I would love to hear what you guys think, though. Are you excited about the Legion Go 2 and Legion Go S? I would love to hear down below. Don't forget to leave a like, comment, and subscribe. All the social media garbage down below. And last but not least, have a wonderful day.